Look at those speed babies flying across the racetrack. The roar of the engines, the smell of burned rubber. Yes, friend, we are back. Stories from motorsports. Learn about the drivers, learn about the humor. Stories from motorsports. With your host Doug Kenny, learn about the funny moments from behind the wheel. Stories from motorsports. Stories from motorsports. Learn about the cars, learn about racing, and hopefully you will be inspired to get into racing or attend a race in the future. Stories from motorsports with Douglas Kenny and Josh May. Oh!
Yeah, so what got you involved in talking about motorsports to people like me, I should say?
What got me into racing was when I was 8 years old and I was in Sterling, Colorado. I'm originally from Colorado and I have
Mhm.
family up in Sterling. And my grandfather was a motorsports fanatic and was at the 1977 Indianapolis 500 when AJ
Oh,
Foyt
wow.
won his fourth. And
Oh,
so,
that's awesome.
yeah. So I got hooked to it when I was 8 years old in 2006, mainly because it was the Memorial Day weekend and I was out with family on a family reunion. And my
Hmm.
grandfather was at home during the weekend and he watched the Indianapolis 500 that year. And that was the year when Sam Hornish Jr. won the race. Have you seen clips of that?
I have, yes, yes.
This is what I remember of that race. So what happened was I was entering the television room where my grandfather was cheering and yapping on about the cars,
Mhm.
and my grandfather considered AJ Foyt his favorite, but he was also
Mhm.
an Andretti fan. So this is what I remember. I remember coming into the room to ask my grandfather if we could go get some ice cream, because that's the
Mhm.
natural request that a kid
Oh,
gives his
yeah,
grandfather. And
always.
my grandfather was like, "Just a minute, Douglas, I'll be with you." And then I saw him watching the race, and it was right when Michael Andretti was leading the final few laps of the race before the restart. And
Hmm.
you had Michael leading, you had Marco leading, and then Scott Dixon, I believe, and Dan Weldon. And the guy running fifth was Sam Hornish Jr. And if you remember right, Hornish had made a mistake earlier in the race that almost
Yep.
cost him the win. And so the race went green again. And there were 3 laps to go. And my grandfather was like, "Come on, Michael, you can do it. You can do it." And then Marco took the lead. And then I heard Grandpa yelling, "Marco, Marco, even better." Because he thought really that the Andretti's had gotten the win wrapped up. And then what I noticed, however, while my grandfather was watching the Andretti's, what I noticed was in fifth place, Hornish suddenly passed Weldon and also Scott Dixon within only a lap, and then got to third the next time by, and then got past a very lapped Max Papis, I believe, and then set his eyes on the Andretti's. But he was pretty far back from Marco and Michael. And then the final 2 laps went on, and by that point, Hornish had gotten past, Michael, and then set his eyes on Marco. And then, if you remember right, in turn four, Hornish was about to make the pass on Marco Andretti, and my grandfather almost went breathless for a sec and then was heavily relieved when Marco blocked Hornish and then Hornish lost like most of a front stretch behind Marco. The white flag waved and my grandfather was like, "Marco's got this race in the bag." And then And then he had a big smile on his face. And then on the backstretch, we know what began to happen. And by the time it was turn 3 and 4, my grandfather's smile started to fade when he saw
Oh
Hornish
man.
catching up. And
Yeah.
then and then by the time that they were on the front stretch, I remember my grandfather being like, when he realized
Oh,
what was about to happen. And then Hornish passed Marco at the front stretch at the start finish
mhm.
line. And right after that, my grandfather was like, yeah, I didn't think Sam would have been able to do that, but he did.
Yeah, yeah, it was a master class at saving tires and going really, really hard at the end. That was awesome.
Yeah, yeah. I remember my grandfather was really disappointed though about the outcome, like a lot of other
Yeah.
people were. And because
Yeah.
I asked him afterwards, I remember watching the photo finish and being like, wow, that red and white car pulled it off. Because that was the car I was focused on. And then I remember
Yeah.
asking, Grandpa, can we now get ice cream? And my grandfather was like, yes, Douglas, we're gonna go get ice cream and I'm gonna unusually eat some with you. Which was his way of saying he was going to cope with the outcome with the
Yeah, yeah, a little sad.
yeah, but I remember watching that. And then the next year, I saw the newspapers of Kevin Harvick beating Mark Martin at Daytona, and then Jamie McMurray, my hero, beating Kyle Busch at the Pepsi 400. And I remember
Yeah.
seeing all that, and I was hooked from then on. And then from 2008 to 2020, I went to every NASCAR race at Phoenix from 2008 to 2020. And then I started diversing into Indy cars and then monster trucks, and I just became a fan of motorsports in general. In 2016 is when I began the channel and began speaking with a lot of my heroes and meeting them in person. And I have a lot of NASCAR stories, you know.
That's awesome. That
Yeah,
is awesome.
I remember seeing Carl Edwards win in the subway car in turn two that year in the subway race, which was pretty cool. And then I
Yeah.
saw Ryan Newman win for Richard Childress, which I believe was his only win for the team in
I believe so.
2017. I saw
Hmm.
Matt
Yeah.
Kenseth's last win in the 20 car and in his career, which was a pretty good highlight. And then,
Yeah.
yeah, it was pretty cool, you know, attending all those races and seeing all the different winners and meeting a lot of the guys. You know, it was a lot of fun
Mhm.
memories.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, a lot of historical moments that you got to see. That is cool.
Yeah, and then I was in Nashville for the IndyCar race in 2021 when Marcus Ericsson launched and won. Did you see that one?
I didn't see that one. I did not.
It was really interesting. That was a
Mhm.
weekend where I saw all different types of racing supporting the IndyCar series, you know, and
Mhm.
I remember that race because of the how it ended up with the Trans Am 2 race with Mike Skeen and then Robbie Gordon's Stadium Super Trucks. And I remember seeing Robert Stout win his first Stadium Super Truck race, and then Robbie Gordon won, which was highly unusual for a usual
Mhm.
race fanatic, which was cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then
Wow,
I
that's
saw
awesome.
the yeah, then I saw the GT America cars on the streets and then IndyCar finally. And this is what I remember about IndyCar. It was a 90 or 80 lap race, I believe, if I recall right, in the streets. And I remember on lap four watching two cars run into the back of each other, which was Marcus Ericsson running into the back of Sebastian Bourdais and getting airborne and losing his front wing. He was coming to the pits to repair the wing, and then he was penalized a lap or two, I believe, for avoidable contact. And he came
Mhm.
back and still won the race. And I remember thinking his goose was cooked, like no one was gonna recover from that. And then he won the race. And I was like, it was the same reaction as my
Wow.
grandfather, kind of. Although in my case, I was actually happy. I
Yeah.
had the same thoughts, which was I didn't think he could do that, but he did.
Yeah, disbelief, but wow. Holy crap. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. What was your first win behind the wheel?
Oh, wow, baby, look at those speed babies flying across the racetrack. The roar of the engines, the smell of burned rubber. Yes, friend, we are back. Stories from motorsports. Learn about the drivers, learn about the humor. Stories from motorsports. With your host Doug Kenny, learn about the funny moments from behind the wheel. Stories from motorsports. Stories from motorsports. Learn about the cars, learn about racing, and hopefully you will be inspired to get into racing or attend a race in the future. Stories from motorsports with Douglas Kenny.